The skeletal fingers of winter's first true frost clawed at the corrugated metal, their icy grip sending shivers through the vast, echoing cavern of the customs inspection warehouse after hours. You stood amidst the towering stacks of crated cargo, a solitary sentinel in a world of forgotten goods and bureaucratic dust. The air, thick with the scent of brine, treated lumber, and the faint, metallic tang of rust, seemed to press down on you, a physical weight mirroring the one that had settled deep within your chest for years. Your breath plumed in the frigid air, a fragile ghost against the industrial chill. The low hum of distant machinery, a generator perhaps, was the only counterpoint to the profound silence, a silence you had grown accustomed to, even sought out. It was the sound of your own exile, a self-imposed penance in the wake of a career meticulously dismantled, a reputation meticulously shredded. They had stripped you of the badge, Marcus, but they couldn't strip you of the memory, the haunting image of a face frozen in a final, silent scream, the journalist. You ran a gloved hand over the rough surface of a shipping container, its stenciled destination a forgotten port, a world away. This was your domain now, the periphery, the forgotten spaces where the world's discarded secrets accumulated. Almost. Their footsteps, precise and unhurried, echoed across the concrete floor, each click a measured intrusion into your carefully constructed solitude. This was not a random encounter. You knew it with the instinct that, despite everything, still hummed beneath your skin, sharp and unforgiving. The figure stopped several yards away, allowing the dim, amber glow of a high-mounted security lamp to illuminate their features. A man of indeterminate age, with eyes that held the weary wisdom of too many late nights and too many grim truths. He wasn't familiar, not directly, but you recognized the type, the kind of man who moved through the world with a quiet authority, pulling strings you never saw, speaking in implications rather than declarations. A fixer, a handler, a conduit for power. Marcus Thorne, the man's voice was a low murmur, surprisingly resonant in the vast space. It has been a long time since your name carried the weight it once did. You said nothing, your eyes narrowing, assessing. The man offered no smile, no overt gesture of greeting. He simply stood, radiating an undeniable, if subtle, force. You've been off the grid, he continued, a faint amusement playing at the corners of his lips. A deliberate retreat, I imagine. One that makes you uniquely suited for what I am about to propose. The word hung in the cold air, propose. It tasted like old ash and forgotten promises. And I don't accept. The man took a slow step forward, his gaze unwavering. Perhaps not for yourself, but for justice? The journalist. Remember her? A jolt, sharp and unexpected, pierced through the layers of your carefully cultivated indifference. Her name, a silent scream in your memory, had been the first brick in the wall of your downfall. But your warnings had been ignored, your persistence deemed obsessive. A new piece of evidence, unforeseen, undeniable. It links her death directly to something vast, something reaching into the highest echelons of power. A prominent politician's current presidential campaign, to be precise. It was the same fire that had burned you before, but it was also the fire that had made you good, had made you relentless. Why me, you demanded, the bitterness sharp. I'm a ghost, too. A disgraced one. Because you saw it then, Marcus. When everyone else dismissed it as a street crime, you saw the design. You understood the implications of a journalist digging too deep into certain financial dealings, certain arrangements. You were ridiculed, yes, but you were right. The man's eyes held yours, a silent challenge. And now, the stakes are higher than ever. We need someone who remembers the original threads, someone who has nothing left to lose, and everything to gain. A chance at redemption. Redemption. The word resonated in the cavernous space, a siren call. It was a word you hadn't dared to speak, hadn't dared to even think, in years. The offer hung heavy, a dangerous, tempting fruit. It was a return to the world you had fled, a dive back into the murky depths that had nearly drowned you. But it was also the only path to quiet the journalist's ghost, and perhaps, your own. This was your chance to pick up the broken pieces, not just of a case, but of yourself. The disillusionment still clung to you like the warehouse dust, but beneath it, a determined resolve began to harden. "Tell me everything," you said, the words a quiet vow, sealing your return to the fray. The game, it seemed, was far from over. The word redemption still hummed in the frigid air, an invisible current tugging at the frayed edges of your resolve. The offer, delivered by the contact whose face remained mostly in shadow, was a gauntlet thrown, not just at your feet. At the very core of your scarred pride. So, Marcus Thorne, the voice, smooth as polished granite, cut through the quiet. "Do you pick it up?" Your gaze drifted over the mountains of crated goods, shrouded in tarpaulins like sleeping giants. Dust motes danced in the slivers of moonlight piercing the grimy skylights. This place, a purgatory for misplaced goods, felt like a fitting backdrop for a second chance you neither believed in nor felt you deserved. A heavy sigh, almost imperceptible, escaped the contact. Then, a gesture. They rolled across the concrete floor with a low rumble, a metallic groan that seemed to announce the weight of what they carried. "Everything," the contact stated, stepping into a pool of industrial light, revealing the sharp angles of their tailored suit, their face still obscured by the angle. Every last scrap. The original detective's notes, the forensic reports, witness statements, the journalist's personal effects, what little remained. All of it untouched since the file was sealed away. You approached the pallet, a shiver tracing its way down your spine. The boxes were old, their cardboard faded, stained with the patina of time and neglect. A fine layer of dust coated their surfaces, like the residue of forgotten dreams. You ran a hand over the topmost box, the coarse paper cool beneath your fingertips. Not until now. Politics intervened. The higher-ups wanted it gone. The contact's voice held a note of weary resignation, perhaps even a hint of shared cynicism. But things have changed. A different political wind blows. And the name of the victim, Eleanor Vance, has resurfaced in less official circles. Eleanor Vance. The name hung in the air, a ghost. A brilliant investigative journalist, fearless, relentless. Her murder, over a decade ago, had been a blip, quickly overshadowed by other headlines, dismissed as a random street crime. The unease. You pulled a utility knife from your pocket, the familiar way to comfort. With a precise motion, you sliced through the tape on the first box. The dry, papery scent of old documents wafted out, mingled with something metallic, like stale blood. You reached in, pulling out a thick manila folder, its label faded but legible: Vance, Eleanor, Case File 001. Your fingers, calloused from years of a different kind of labor, trembled slightly as you opened it. The first thing that greeted you was a photograph. A grainy, black and white image of the crime scene. A narrow alleyway, slick with rain, a figure sprawled awkwardly against a dumpster. You remembered the details from the brief news reports, the initial shock. But seeing it now, through the lens of a decade, with the promise of unseen connections, it felt different. You flipped through the initial reports, the time of discovery, the responding officers, the preliminary cause of death, a single, precise stab wound. Then, the victim's photo, a vibrant headshot. Eleanor Vance, her eyes intelligent and direct, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. She looked like someone who knew too much. As you delved deeper, the quiet of the warehouse became a canvas for the echoes of the past. Your fingers traced over handwritten notes from the original detective, their frustration palpable in the increasingly scrawled script. Witness statements, contradictory and vague, painted a picture of a bustling street that suddenly went blind. Then, a flicker. Didn't recognize the driver, but saw a brief flash of a lapel pin, a stylized O with a crown. You paused, your brow furrowing. An O with a crown. Where had you seen that before? You continued, shuffling through crime scene photos. One caught your eye, a close-up of Eleanor Vance's left hand. Her fingers were slightly curled, as if clutching something. But the official report stated nothing was found in her grasp. Too small to identify, but out of place against the grimy pavement. A detail overlooked, or deliberately ignored? The next box yielded more. Eleanor Vance's personal effects. A worn leather journal. You opened it, the pages brittle. Her meticulous handwriting filled the margins, cross-referencing names, dates, locations. One entry, dated just days before her death, screamed at you a meeting with the overseer, Project Chimera. The senator's involvement confirmed. This goes deeper than even I imagined. The O is everywhere. The O again. And the senator. Your mind immediately jumped to the current political landscape. The original case, a random act of violence, was unraveling before your eyes. It wasn't random. It was precise. It was connected. Eleanor Vance had been digging into something monumental, something that reached into the highest echelons of power. You looked up from the files, your eyes sweeping the vast, silent warehouse. The air felt heavy, charged with unspoken truths. The redemption you sought might be waiting here, buried beneath layers of deception and forgotten history. The game had begun, and you, Marcus Thorne, were no longer an observer. You were in it, knee-deep. Years have passed, yet the scent of dust, stale cardboard, and forgotten ambition clings to the air, thicker than the gloom. Your flashlight beam slices through the motes dancing in the limited light, illuminating skeletal shelves that once held contraband and commerce, now just monuments to an abandoned past. Each echo of your footsteps against the concrete floor is a ghost, recalling the frantic chaos of that night, the cold dread that had settled when the journalist's body was discovered amidst the cargo. You remember the initial assessment, a robbery gone wrong, a random act of violence. A convenient lie, you now suspect. The official report, a tapestry of half-truths and hurried conclusions, still gnaws at you. Your eyes trace the periphery, seeking the anomalies your younger self, blinded by procedure and a desperate need for a quick resolution, had overlooked. The crime scene tape is long gone, the chalk outline faded into the floor's history, but the imprint of failure remains vivid in your memory. Your gaze snags on a section of the far wall, where a stack of empty wooden crates leans at an unnatural angle. not a random mark from a forklift, but a deliberate scoring. You push the crates aside, the scraping sound loud in the cavernous space. Behind them, a loose section of the corrugated steel wall panel reveals itself. It's too neat, too deliberate to be accidental. You wedge your fingers into the seam, pulling with a grunt. The panel gives way, revealing a shallow recess. Inside, nestled in the dust, is a small, leather-bound journal. Its cover, once a rich mahogany, is now scuffed and scarred. A journalist's tool, a constant companion. Your fingers brush over the faint, embossed symbol on its cover, a stylized O, precisely like the one on the note from the previous chapter. This wasn't a random act. This was a message, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes. You flip through the brittle pages, careful not to damage the delicate script. Most entries are shorthand, observations, dates, and names you don't recognize. But then, a page stands out, ringed by anxious scribbles. Project Chimera, it reads, underlined thrice. And beneath it, a name, Caldwell. Senator Arthur Caldwell. The connection solidifies, sending a jolt through you. The journalist was not just investigating, they were uncovering. A final entry, scrawled in a frantic hand, simply states they know. This will be my last. The journal drops from your trembling fingers, landing softly on the concrete. This wasn't a robbery. This was an execution. Later, the stale air of a diner clings to your clothes as you slide into the booth opposite the detective. His face, etched with the weariness of too many late nights and too many compromises, barely registers surprise at seeing you. He sips his lukewarm coffee, eyes darting around the near-empty room. Marcus, he says, his voice a low gravel. Heard you were sniffing around. Thought you'd hung up the ghost for good. Some ghosts don't stay buried, Robert, you reply, pushing a photograph of the journal's O across the table. Remember this? He glances at it, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. That old case? Why now, Marcus? It's done. Closed. Leave it be. It was never closed, not really. We were told what to find. Some things. Some forces. They don't like their secrets aired. You start digging here, you're not just digging up dirt. You're digging up graves. Not just for the dead, but for the living too. Consider yourself warned. His gaze holds yours, an unspoken threat hanging heavy between the coffee cups. The message is clear, powerful hands had guided the original investigation, and they still held the reins. The editor's office, a sanctuary of overflowing bookshelves and stacks of newsprint, feels like a mausoleum. The journalist's former editor, a woman with sharp eyes and a weary smile, offers you a weak tea. Her hands tremble slightly as she places the mug before you. He was relentless, Marcus, she begins, her voice hushed. A pit bull with a pen. He was on to something truly massive, something about a network of influence, funding, and, well, corruption that reached higher than anyone dared imagine. Did he ever mention Project Chimera, you ask, watching her closely? Her eyes widen, a flash of fear. She hesitates, then nods slowly. He had some cryptic notes, sketches of a strange symbol. He talked about a private security firm, a shell corporation, and how they were tied to Senator Caldwell's early campaigns, years ago. before he became a household name. He said it was the key to everything, how the senator built his empire. He was trying to link it all together, the money, the power, the dirty work. And the O symbol? She shakes her head. He never explained it. Just said it was a mark, a signature of the organization behind it all. He was going to expose them, Marcus. All of them. He was so close. Her voice breaks, choked with grief and regret. He called me the night before. He said he had everything. He said he was going to blow it all wide open. The puzzle pieces, disparate and jagged, begin to click into place, forming a grim mosaic. The journal, the senator's name, the project, the warnings from the detective, the editor's confirmation. The journalist wasn't killed for what they found, but for what they were about to reveal. And now, you are holding the thread of that revelation. The feeling of being watched, of powerful eyes turning towards your renewed interest, prickles at your neck. You are no longer just investigating a murder, you are challenging an empire. Dust motes danced in the solitary beam of your flashlight, a fragile pillar against the encroaching gloom. The previous chapter's echoes, the senator's name, the project, the editor's grim confirmation, still reverberated in the cavernous space, each word a stone dropped into a deep well. This wasn't just a cold case, it was a living, breathing entity, stirring in the shadows. You spread the journalist's fragmented notes across a stack of burlap sacks, the rough fabric a stark contrast to the smooth aged paper. The journal lay open, its pages filled with a meticulous script, a testament to a mind both brilliant and relentless. Your fingers, calloused from years of gripping a service weapon and now, too often, a whiskey glass, traced the hurried annotations, the underlined phrases, the question marks scrawled in margins. The journalist had a singular obsession, Project Chimera. The name surfaced again and again, a dark refrain. But now, seeing it alongside the senator's election campaign details, the pieces began to coalesce. The notes spoke of massive land acquisitions, expedited permits, and a series of shell corporations funneling funds. The journalist had meticulously documented a web of connections, the Obsidian Group's subsidiaries donating heavily to the senator's campaign, a direct pipeline of influence. Their proposed Project Chimera wasn't a scandal, it was an infrastructure project, vast in scope, promising economic revitalization for the region, yet buried within the journalist's scrawls were hints of ecological devastation, forced displacement, and a disturbing lack of transparency regarding its true beneficiaries. You saw it then, laid bare on the grimy sacks. The journalist wasn't just investigating a politician, they were dissecting the anatomy of power itself. The senator was merely the public face, the charismatic frontman for a far more insidious enterprise. The Obsidian Group, through Project Chimera, sought to consolidate immense wealth and control, with the senator's campaign as their vehicle to secure the necessary legislative approvals and public support. The journalist had stumbled upon the heart of a hydra, a multi-headed beast of corporate greed and political manipulation. They had unearthed the truth about how a powerful corporate entity was leveraging a political campaign to push through a project that would line their pockets while devastating communities and the environment. This was the motive, stark and unforgiving. Your head snapped up, flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, momentarily blinding you with its sudden movement. The air, already heavy, seemed to thicken, pressing in. You weren't alone. The hair on your arms prickled. A shuffling sound, heavy and deliberate, scraped across the concrete floor, not far. It wasn't the skittering of a rodent, it was the measured tread of heavy boots. One, then another. They knew you were here. The realization hit with the force of a physical blow. You had pushed too far, too fast. You pressed yourself against a towering stack of wooden crates, the rough-hewn timber digging into your back. Your breath hitched, shallow and silent. The rhythmic thudding grew louder, closer, accompanied by the faint creak of leather. Two figures, judging by the alternating footsteps. One of them coughed, a dry, rasping sound that seemed to vibrate through the very floor. They were searching, methodical. Your eyes darted, seeking an escape route, a path through the labyrinthine aisles of goods. To your left, a narrow gap between two container units, just wide enough for you to squeeze through. But it was a gamble. It lingered on the scattered notes, the open journal. They knew what you were looking at. They knew your name. They knew your past. The flashlight beam snapped back, sweeping closer to your hiding spot. This wasn't intimidation, this was an execution. You dove for the narrow gap, scraping your shoulder against splintered wood, the rough edges tearing at your jacket. You scrambled through the gap, not looking back, your heart a frantic drum against your ribs. Another shot rang out, closer this time, the whizzing sound of the projectile slicing through the air near your head. You twisted, ducking behind another wall of crates, your breath ragged. They were skilled, precise. You knew this dance, the deadly ballet of hunter and hunted. You navigated the maze, the sounds of their pursuit growing fainter as you put distance between you. Finally, you burst through a side entrance, a small, unmarked door leading to a dimly lit alleyway. The cool night air hit your face like a splash of ice water, sharp and cleansing. You didn't stop, didn't look back, not until the distant wail of a siren, a phantom sound, faded into the urban hum. You were out, but the message was clear. You had disturbed a nest of vipers, and they had struck back. The game had just become deadly. You froze, every muscle taut, the air a cold vice around your lungs. The beam of the flashlight, a frantic, searching eye, swept across the stacked crates, the canvas-draped forms, the silent monuments of commerce. It danced along the grimy concrete floor, a frantic ballet of light and shadow, before halting, trembling, on the very edge of your makeshift cover. Your breath snagged. Dust motes, illuminated like tiny stars, swirled in the agitated air. I felt it. Another voice, sharper, cut through the gloom. Check the east wall. This was your chance. A breath, a single, shallow intake of the warehouse's stale, metallic air, and you moved. The cold metal of a forklift's tines scraped against the floor somewhere behind you, closer than you liked. They were moving, converging. You reached the crate, fingers brushing against the coarse canvas. With a practiced tug, you peeled back the tarp, revealing a wooden box, unassuming, yet humming with the promise of answers. The lock was old, a simple brass padlock, easily bypassed with the tension wrench and pick you always carried. A soft click, and the lid lifted, releasing a scent of old paper and forgotten dust. You pulled the top folder, the faint glow from your phone's screen illuminating the faded ink. Case file 07-1998. This was it. The ghost that had haunted your waking hours and fractured your sleep. Flipping through the brittle pages, you found the usual, witness statements, forensic reports, the initial police observations. But then, a jolt. A photograph, tucked carelessly between two pages, caught your eye. It was an aerial shot of the crime scene, grainy in black and white, but unmistakable. And circled in red ink, a detail that had been overlooked, dismissed, or perhaps deliberately obscured, a small, almost imperceptible insignia on the side of a parked delivery van. A stylized raven, clutching a scroll. The raven. You knew that symbol. You remembered the man's stern gaze, his unwavering insistence on procedure, his seemingly unimpeachable integrity. He had been a mentor, a pillar of what you believed was right in a corrupt world. The image of the raven, now searing itself into your memory, twisted the knife of doubt deeper. Could he have been involved? Or was he merely a pawn, a blind spot you never considered? Your fingers trembled as you dug deeper into the folder. Beneath the photograph, a handwritten note, scrawled on a small, yellowed slip of paper. Not your former superior's elegant script, but another, more familiar hand. A date, October 27, 1998. And a single word, contain. Contain. Not investigate. Not pursue. Contain. The blood roared in your ears. This wasn't just a new clue, it was a personal affront. You had been on that initial task force, a young, eager detective, desperate to prove yourself. You'd reviewed these very files. You'd trusted the judgment of your superiors. But someone, perhaps the very hand that penned this note, had deliberately steered the investigation away, had buried the truth under layers of bureaucracy and fabricated conclusions. The sound of heavy footsteps reverberated, closer now, echoing between the stacks. A flashlight beam cut through the gloom, painting the crate you crouched behind in stark relief. They were closing in. You had only moments. You quickly resecured the photograph and the note within the file, snapping the old lock back into place on the crate. The betrayal, sharp and bitter, ignited a resolve you hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just about Elias Vance anymore. It was about redemption, not just for your badge, but for the trust you had so naively placed. You heard a gruff command, check the crates near the loading bay. You gripped the file, the rough paper a tangible link to a past you thought you understood, a past now twisting into something monstrous. You knew what you had to do. The betrayal stung, a fresh wound, but it also clarified your path. The hunt was on, and this time, you wouldn't be misled. You would find the truth, no matter who stood in your way, no matter how deeply the roots of this conspiracy ran, and no matter the agonizing cost to your own fractured past. The air, thick with the scent of dust and forgotten freight, pressed in, turning the vast space into a suffocating enclosure. Every shadow writhed, a potential watcher, a silent judge. You moved, a predator in a concrete jungle, your steps measured, almost silent against the echoing silence. You skirted towering stacks of crates, their labels cryptic hieroglyphs of global trade, each one a potential hiding place, a potential ambush. The rough paper of the file chafed against your palm, grounding you, a tangible anchor in the swirling uncertainty. Reaching the service exit, its heavy steel door a promise of escape, you paused. A faint hum, barely perceptible, vibrated through the floorboards. Was it the building settling, or something more? You pressed your ear to the cold metal, straining. Nothing but the distant drone of the city, muted and indifferent. With a silent prayer to a justice you were beginning to believe was a myth, you unlatched the heavy bolts, the clicks echoing like gunshots in the stillness, and slipped out into the pre-dawn grayness. The city swallowed you whole, a vast, indifferent beast. You found refuge in a cramped, anonymous room, the kind rented by the hour, its walls thin and stained, its single window offering a view of another brick wall. Here, in this forgotten space, you could finally unburden yourself of the file. You spread the contents across the grimy table. Its surface was scarred, ancient, but its presence hummed with purpose. This was it. This was what the journalist had hidden, what they had died for. Your fingers, steady despite the tremor in your gut, connected the chip to the old, battered reader you always kept close. The screen flickered to life, a stark white against the gloom of the room. A password prompt. You typed them in, each keystroke a heartbeat. The screen went black for a moment, then burst forth with text. It wasn't a ledger, not in the traditional sense. It was a network map, a meticulously detailed web of connections. Names, dates, financial transfers, coded communications, all laid bare. You traced the lines with your finger, each connection a fresh bruise on the face of justice. The prominent politician, the one currently campaigning on a platform of integrity, was not merely compromised, but a core operative, a crucial node in the architect's vast, intricate design. The journalist's investigation had been surgically precise, targeting the very heart of this network, documenting how the architects manipulated elections, controlled media narratives, and siphoned public funds through shell corporations and offshore accounts. Then, you found it. Decrypting them took longer, a painstaking process of cross-referencing and educated guesses, until the final piece slotted into place. The journalist had uncovered the full extent of the architect's reach, including their involvement in orchestrating your own downfall. It wasn't just redemption for your badge you sought now, it was vindication for the journalist, for the truth, for a system twisted and corrupted by unseen hands. The architects had stolen your reputation, your future, and now, they had revealed the true depth of their depravity. The air in the small room grew heavy, charged with unspoken resolve. You knew the path ahead was fraught with peril, that the architects would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. But looking at the names, the dates, the irrefutable evidence staring back from the screen, there was no turning back. The cost, whatever it might be, no longer mattered. And you would burn their house down. The file, now fully revealed, was no longer just paper and data, it was a weapon. The air, thick with the scent of dust. And forgotten freight, pressed in, turning the vast space into a suffocating chamber. Your fingers, trembling slightly, eased open the brittle manila, revealing the heart of the beast. Within, nestled among mundane shipping manifests and customs declarations, was a photograph. Not of a face, but of a ledger page, crudely snapped, its edges blurred, yet the figures starkly legible. A name, scrawled in the margin next to the largest sum, clawed at your memory, ether dynamics. You dismissed it years ago, a footnote in a forgotten report, but now it sang a chilling tune. This was the shadowy organization, its tendrils wrapped around the politician's campaign, the silent hand guiding his ascent. Then, a second document. A scanned copy of a signed directive, surprisingly brazen in its directness. It wasn't a smoking gun for the murder, not yet, but it was a blueprint for a cover-up. The directive, bearing the politician's unmistakable signature, ordered the immediate cessation of all independent inquiries into the journalist's disappearance, reclassifying it as a random act of violence. The date on the directive? Weeks before the journalist's body was ever discovered. This wasn't just a cover-up, it was premeditated obfuscation, a deliberate burying of truth before it even had a chance to breathe. The politician hadn't just benefited from the murder, he had actively engineered its erasure from public memory, perhaps even orchestrated the journalist's silencing. The rustle of the papers in your grip seemed to echo in the cavernous space. You knew, with an absolute certainty that settled deep in your bones, that this discovery was the final, devastating piece. The journalist had stumbled upon ether dynamics, its financial ties to the politician, and was about to expose it. Their death wasn't random, it was a calculated sacrifice to protect a burgeoning empire of influence. A metal door, heavy and unseen, groaned open, then slammed shut with a finality that spoke of intrusion. Your breath hitched. They knew. They had been watching. Your mind, a whirlwind of adrenaline and strategic thought, instantly cataloged escape routes. The service exit near the loading docks, the single window high above, impossible without a ladder. No time for elaborate plans. Footsteps. Measured, heavy, approaching with an unnerving precision that spoke of training. They weren't just curious night watchmen. This was a direct, aggressive move, a hunting party. You clutched the file tighter, its secrets now a burden as much as a weapon. Through the narrow gaps in the crates, you saw them, three figures, silhouettes against the distant emergency lights, moving with a predatory grace. They carried no flashlights, their eyes adapted to the gloom, or perhaps, they knew the layout intimately. A voice, low and resonant, cut through the air. Thorne. We know you're here. Make this easy. The voice was unfamiliar, yet it carried the weight of authority, of an organization that expected obedience. Easy? There was no easy left for you. Your badge was gone, your reputation in tatters, and now, your life was on the line. You were Marcus Thorne, a man with nothing left to lose but the truth. You began to move, a phantom among the forgotten goods. Each step was a silent prayer, a gamble against the creaking floorboards, the shifting cargo. The service exit. It was your only chance. A crate shifted, a tiny scrape of wood against concrete. One of the figures paused, head cocked. Over there. A burst of movement. You sprinted, low to the ground, weaving through the labyrinth of crates. The sound of their pursuit intensified, a symphony of purpose echoing off the corrugated metal walls. Reaching the service door, you fumbled with the rusted latch, your fingers clumsy with urgency. It stuck. You slammed your shoulder into the door, gritting your teeth against the dull ache. It groaned, a tortured protest, but held. He's at the exit. You heard the click of a safety being disengaged. Not stun batons anymore. They were moving to lethal force. Desperation lent you unnatural strength. You kicked the door, hard, the old wood splintering. With a final heave, it burst open, revealing the damp, concrete alley beyond. You tumbled out, scraping your hands on the rough ground, the file still clutched tightly. The night air, cool and sharp, hit your face like a slap. Behind you, the heavy thud of boots on concrete marked their immediate exit from the warehouse. You were a fugitive, truly on the run now, the hunt fully engaged. No time to breathe, no time to think beyond the next step. You knew a network of old tunnels, a forgotten artery beneath the city, accessible from this very alley. A desperate gambit, but your only one. The evidence in your hand, the truth of the politician and ether dynamics, felt like a burning coal. You had to survive. The distant wail of sirens began to bloom in the night, not for you, not yet, but a warning of the world closing in. The game had changed. The hunters were now the hunted, and you, Marcus Thorne, were their prey. But you carried the truth, and that, you knew, was a far more dangerous weapon than any they possessed. The splintered wood of the door scraped against the concrete as you tumbled out, a symphony of pain and adrenaline your only companions. The alley air, damp and biting, offered a brief, harsh welcome. Behind you, shouts and the clatter of boots faded, replaced by the throbbing in your ribs and the metallic taste of fear. No time for a proper escape, just a desperate scramble into the labyrinthine backstreets, each shadow a potential pursuer, each distant siren a reminder of the net tightening around you. You moved like a phantom, a whisper of a man, through the grimy veins of the city. They were done playing. This wasn't about rearrest anymore, it was about silencing you. Your mind, despite the haze of pain, raced. The puzzle pieces, scattered and disparate, began to coalesce. It clicked. That was where the final, damning truth lay hidden. Its sheer scale dwarfed the surrounding industrial buildings. No lights flickered within its vast shell, only the occasional gleam from a distant street lamp reflecting off its high windows. The main gates were secured, a fortress against intrusion. But you knew their weaknesses, the blind spots, the forgotten access points from your previous life. A rusted side door, tucked between two overflowing dumpsters, groaned a reluctant welcome. You picked the lock with practiced ease, the click a stark counterpoint to the city's distant hum. Forklifts, like dormant beasts, sat silent and still. You navigated the maze of stacked goods, your eyes scanning for any anomaly, any sign of recent disturbance. The informant had been vague, a single-word shipment. A high-value, off-the-books delivery, processed under the radar. You remembered the journalist's final, frantic call, a fragmented message about special cargo and political favors. It had been dismissed then, another wild goose chase. Now, it was the key. The wood was newer, the seals less weathered than the surrounding stock. You found the one that felt right, a subtle difference in the grain, a faint scent of fresh varnish beneath the warehouse's pervasive mustiness. With a pry bar scavenged from a discarded pallet, you worked quickly, silently. The lid groaned, then gave way. Inside, nestled amongst packing peanuts and a layer of protective foam, wasn't what you expected. No weapons, no illicit drugs. It looked like a relic, out of place in this industrial tomb. Your fingers traced the intricate carvings, a feeling of unease prickling your skin. This was too deliberate. Too artistic for a simple smuggling operation. You opened the box. Inside, on a bed of crimson velvet, lay not a jewel, but a small, sleek data chip, no bigger than your thumb. It was encased in a clear, hardened polymer, glowing faintly with an internal LED. This was it. The heart of the conspiracy. You found a forgotten terminal in a dusty, disused office at the far end of the warehouse, its screen flickering to life with a jolt. Your fingers flew across the keyboard, inserting the chip. The encryption was formidable, a layered defense designed to thwart all but the most determined. But you knew their patterns, their favorite algorithms, their blind spots. The journalist had taught you to think like them, to anticipate their moves. Minutes stretched into an eternity, the hum of the terminal your only companion. Then, a cascade of data. Names, dates, transactions, encrypted communications. It was all there. A detailed ledger of illicit funds funneled through offshore accounts, payments made to key figures, the exact dates and times of meetings. And then, the ultimate reveal, a recorded conversation. Not just a transcription, but an audio file. The Thorne's folly message now made sense. The journalist had been investigating the same case that had ruined you, and was about to expose the truth that had been buried. Your breath hitched. Undeniable. Irrefutable. The truth, finally laid bare. This wasn't just proof, it was a digital confession, a blueprint of their entire operation. You couldn't just leak this. No, this required a different approach. A confrontation. You had the evidence, the leverage. You would use it to draw them out, to force them into the light. With careful precision, you copied the essential files, encrypting them multiple times, scattering fragments across secure, anonymous servers. Then, you crafted a single, concise message. A direct ultimatum. It contained just enough incriminating detail from the ledger to prove you held the full truth, but not enough to be dismissed as a hoax. You addressed it to the politician's most private, secure communication channel, a channel only accessible to a select few. I have the truth, you wrote. Everything. The journalist's murder. Your organization. The entire network. Meet me. Tomorrow night. Midnight. The abandoned factory on the old industrial road. Alone. Fail to appear, and the world will know your name by dawn. You sent it, a digital arrow loosed into the heart of their empire. You knew, with every fiber of your being, that you were walking into a trap. They wouldn't send one man, they would send an army. But this was your only path to justice, your only chance at redemption. You deleted your traces, wiped the terminal, and slipped back into the night, the weight of the data chip in your pocket a heavy, burning promise. The final act was set. High above, the skeletal ribs of the ceiling vanished into the gloom, pierced only by the weak, yellow glow of emergency lights that cast long, distorted shadows across the concrete floor. You moved with a predator's quiet intent, your hand instinctively brushing the cold steel beneath your jacket, a familiar weight against your ribs. This was no ordinary rendezvous, it was the crucible, the final act of a play written in blood and betrayal. They were waiting. Not an army, as your instincts had warned, but a carefully curated tableau of power and menace. In the center, bathed in the anemic light, stood the politician, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the utilitarian surroundings. Beside him, a figure radiating an almost unnatural stillness, the true orchestrator, the figurehead, whose eyes, even from this distance, felt like chips of polished obsidian. And flanking them, two hulking enforcers, their stances wide, their gazes unwavering, predatory. Marcus Thorne, the politician's voice, usually a practiced bomb, was now a thin, brittle blade. Predictable. You stopped, a calculated distance maintained, your voice a low rumble that seemed to absorb the warehouse's vastness rather than echo within it. I always finish what I start. A loose end. A loose end, you repeated, the words tasting like ash. Or a truth-teller who got too close. Too close to the network of shell corporations, the offshore accounts, the illicit funding funneled into your campaign. Too close to the deal you struck with the figurehead here, trading influence for power, selling off pieces of this nation's future for a shot at the highest office. The politician scoffed, a forced, theatrical sound. Conjecture. The ramblings of a disgraced lawman. Conjecture? You took a slow step forward, your voice gaining a quiet intensity. Or the precise details of a conspiracy laid bare? The journalist wasn't killed by a random street thug, as your initial investigation conveniently concluded. They had the evidence of the kickbacks from the customs contracts, the manipulated bids for infrastructure projects, the very cargo moving through warehouses like this, often undeclared, untaxed, and untraceable. You gestured around the cavernous space. This place. It was part of their network. The journalist found the ledger, the one detailing the specific shipments, the dates, the names of the consultants facilitating the transfers. The enforcers shifted, their hands subtly moving towards their belts. The journalist's final report, you continued, your voice unwavering, wasn't just an exposé of corruption. It was a blueprint of a takeover. They documented how your campaign funds were laundered through a series of ghost companies, all ultimately controlled by the figurehead's network. They had the names of the donors who were nothing more than fronts, the details of the charitable foundations that served as conduits for illicit wealth. You saw the first crack in the politician's composure. His smugness had curdled into something akin to fear. "You have nothing," he hissed, but the conviction was gone from his tone. "I have everything," you countered, a ghost of a smile touching your lips. "And so does the world. Remember that digital arrow I sent? It wasn't a warning. It was a release." The journalist's final report, along with every piece of corroborating evidence I've unearthed, the ledgers, the financial records, the encrypted communications, it's all out there now. Timed for public release. A dead man's switch, you might say. The politician's face went ashen. He looked frantically at the figurehead, whose expression remained unreadable, yet the air around them seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken fury. "You've played your hand," the politician stammered, his voice losing its theatrical edge, becoming raw, desperate. "You think that changes anything? We'll discredit you. We'll deny it all." "You can try," you said, your eyes locked onto the figurehead. But the journalist's work was meticulous. My additions only strengthened it. The data is encrypted, decentralized, and already seeding across secure networks. By the time your people even begin to trace it, it will be everywhere. Every news outlet, every independent journalist, every citizen with an internet connection will have access to the truth. The figurehead finally moved, a slow, deliberate step forward. "A foolish gamble, Marcus Thorne. You have walked into your own grave." Their voice was a low, resonant hum, devoid of emotion, yet infinitely menacing. "You may have released information, but you have also sealed your fate. Perhaps," you conceded, a quiet defiance in your posture. "But I've also secured theirs." The politician was hyperventilating, his presidential ambitions crumbling around him. You had laid bare their empire of lies, ripped away the carefully constructed facade. The climax was here, not in a flurry of fists, but in the devastating quiet of exposed truth. You stood in the heart of their operation, a lone figure against their might, having already struck the decisive blow. You stand amidst the wreckage of their carefully constructed lies, the silence now a heavier shroud than any noise could have been. The politician, a figure of crumpled silks and shattered ambition, gasped shallowly, his face a roadmap of dread. His presidential dreams, once a towering edifice, now lie in splintered ruins at your feet. Then, the world outside bleeds in. Sirens, a discordant chorus, slice through the night. Blue and red lights pulse through the grimy windows, painting the metal shelves and stacked crates in fleeting, urgent hues. Footsteps pound on concrete, a growing crescendo, and suddenly, the warehouse doors burst open, spilling in a wave of uniformed figures. You watch them flood the space, the sudden influx of authority a sharp contrast to the intimate, brutal confrontation that just transpired. Their weapons, recently held with such purpose, are now lowered, their defiance draining away like water from a sieve. You see the glint of handcuffs, the practiced movements of arrest. They offer no resistance, their loyalty to the fallen politician apparently not extending to self-sacrifice. A familiar face emerges from the throng, moving with the unhurried precision of someone who knows exactly where they belong. The detective, a silhouette against the flashing lights, approaches you. His gaze is unreadable, a complex tapestry woven with years of shared history and divergent paths. He stops a few feet away, his eyes sweeping over the scene, lingering briefly on the trembling politician, then settling on you. Thorne, he states, the name a crisp, clean cut in the tense air. Not a question, not a commendation, just an acknowledgement. You meet his stare, a silent exchange of respect and lingering resentment. It's done, you respond, your voice raspy, the adrenaline beginning its slow, insidious retreat from your veins. The words feel both like a victory cry and a heavy sigh. He nods, a subtle dip of his chin. The pieces fit. Better than we could have hoped. His gaze drifts to a meticulously labeled crate, then back to you. The journalist. The journalist. His ghost has been your constant companion through this labyrinth, his unyielding pursuit of truth the very engine of your own desperate chase. You feel a pang, a bittersweet ache, knowing that his name will finally be cleared, his murder avenged, but at what cost to him, and to you? As the detectives' team moves to secure the politician, you notice a subtle shift in the detective's posture, a tightening around his eyes. Looks like a last-minute addition to the shipment. No manifest. Intrigued, you follow him. The detective's gloved hand pries open the latch. Inside, nestled amongst layers of industrial foam, isn't contraband or weapons, but a single, sealed briefcase. Its surface is sleek, unblemished, bearing no identifying marks beyond a subtle, almost invisible, embossed symbol, a stylized serpent coiling around a fractured obelisk. Your breath catches. The symbol. You've seen it before, subtly woven into the background of a photograph from the journalist's files, a fleeting glimpse in a document you dismissed as irrelevant. It was a detail you filed away, a whisper in the periphery of your awareness, overshadowed by the more immediate threats. Now, it screams. This isn't just about the politician, is it? You ask, the words a low rumble. The question isn't for the detective, but for the very air, for the lingering shadow of the organization that has pulled these strings. The detective's eyes, usually so guarded, hold a flicker of concern. No. This symbol has been surfacing in other investigations. Discreetly. Always in the background. We never had a tangible link. Until now. He lifts the briefcase, its weight surprisingly substantial. This might just be the key to the lock, Thorne. Redemption, you realize, is not a finite destination, but a perpetual journey. You watch as the politician is led away, his once powerful voice reduced to whimpers. Flashbulbs ignite outside the warehouse, a frantic, hungry pulsing. The news will break soon, a seismic shockwave through the city, through the nation. The cost, though. It settles on you like the dust motes dancing in the warehouse's artificial light. The nights without sleep, the gnawing doubt, the constant looking over your shoulder. You have achieved something monumental, yes, but the victory feels heavy, laden with the weight of sacrifice and the dawning knowledge that the battle is far from truly over. The serpent symbol, etched into your memory, promises a new kind of hunt. You look at your hands, calloused and scarred, and know that the fight for justice, for your own soul, has only just begun its next, more dangerous chapter. Fluorescent lights, some flickering with a tired hum, cast long, distorted shadows that danced with the slow drift of motes in the stillness. The chaotic symphony of sirens had long since faded, leaving behind an echoing quiet that felt almost deafening. You stood amidst the hulking silhouettes of stacked crates and shrink-wrapped pallets, your breath still catching in your chest, a dull ache blooming in your ribs where a glancing blow had landed. A uniformed officer, a young man with wide, earnest eyes, had offered you a ride, but you had declined, needing this solitude, this quiet communion with the ghosts you had finally, irrevocably, confronted. You traced the rough grain of a wooden crate with a gloved finger, the sensation grounding you. The pieces, once scattered like shards of a broken mirror, now clicked into place with an unnerving precision. The brilliant investigative journalist, whose unsolved murder had become the millstone around your neck, hadn't been a random act of violence, a robbery gone wrong. The politician, a man whose public persona had been meticulously crafted from promises of integrity and a future built on transparency, was merely a gilded cage, a front. His presidential campaign, a grand, deceptive spectacle designed to elevate a puppet to a position of ultimate power. Her final, encrypted message, the one you had finally decrypted with the help of a resourceful contact, had laid bare the ultimate objective, not just political power, but the insidious control of crucial national infrastructure, cloaked beneath layers of corporate acquisitions and regulatory capture. Your failure, that agonizing night years ago, hadn't been a lack of skill, but a lack of understanding of the true enemy. They had allowed the journalist's murder to be dismissed, a convenient loose end, never anticipating that her ghost would return to haunt them through your relentless, desperate pursuit of redemption. The organization hadn't just used the politician, they had created him. He was a product, a carefully engineered vessel for their agenda, and the journalist had threatened to expose the entire fabrication. Her death was a warning, a brutal declaration of their reach. You had chosen the latter, and in doing so, had finally seen the full face of the beast. The air in the warehouse felt heavy, charged with the weight of your revelation. You had brought a semblance of justice to the journalist, not by securing a conviction in a courtroom, that battle still loomed, a titanic struggle against an unseen enemy, but by unmasking the truth, by exposing the rot at the core. It was a victory, small in the grand scheme of things, but profound for you. You looked down at your hands, calloused and scraped, the faint tremor a testament to the journey. The badge might be gone, a relic of a past life, but something far more valuable had been reclaimed. Your integrity, once shattered, now felt whole, forged anew in the crucible of your determination. The ghost of your past failure, the image of the journalist's lifeless eyes, no longer haunted your waking thoughts with accusations, but instead settled into a quiet, solemn peace. You had delivered on a promise, not to the system, but to yourself, to her memory. Yet, the tension lingered, a subtle hum beneath the surface of your newfound calm. You had ripped away one layer, exposed one corrupted limb, But the true architects remained elusive, their influence still vast, their reach still terrifying. This wasn't an end, it was merely a beginning. A new path stretched before you, uncertain and fraught with unseen dangers. It wouldn't be paved with official mandates or the reassuring weight of a badge. It would be a solitary road, guided by a sharpened sense of purpose and a quiet, burning resolve. You had walked through the fire and emerged, not unscathed, but undeniably transformed. You would answer its call.